Hi, Doug from unSkript here, and let's talk a little bit about proxies. In our open source, there's only one proxy, and that's the Docker instance that you have. If you're using our SaaS platform, you can have multiple proxies. If you're using our free trial, you have one proxy that's unSkript hosted. And because I'm using the free trial, I have one proxy here called Doug Proxy, and it is unSkript hosted. We could try to add more proxies. You can see here we have an AWS, a Google Cloud, your private cloud, or you could have it on-prem. Because I'm using the free trial, I only have one, and that's why all of these are grayed out. If you are part of our enterprise plans and you would like to install a proxy inside your AWS infrastructure so that you can access bits of your AWS that aren't open to the internet, you can do that, and we can help you do that. So now, inside my Doug proxy here, I have multiple environments. Now, so what's the idea of an environment? By default, you have a global environment. So if you add a credential, it'll be without defining where it's going. It's going to get saved in your global environment. And that just has all the credentials that you create, right? So I have a whole bunch in here that I use for different things. If you used the free trial and you walked through the onboarding, you have a credential to the unSkript MongoDB database because you make a movie query as part of the onboarding. But let's go back to my other environments. I created two additional environments, a Doug production environment and a Doug test environment. Now, the idea here is perhaps you probably have multiple environments in with different credentials. So if you run a unSkript RunBook and you want to run it against test, you're going to use this one set of credentials. If you're running it as production, you're going to use another set of credentials. And so you can see here, I have set up Doug production credentials for AWS and for Slack. And then I gave them a service ID. And we're going to talk about why service IDs are important. And basically, my AWS has an AWS service ID. My Slack has the Doug Slack service ID. Let's look at test. Again, I have a test. In my test environment, I have the test Slack and test AWS, but I have the same service IDs. And that's where things get really cool. And let's walk through why that is. So I'm here at my X RunBooks page, and I have the Doug Video IAM user RunBook right here. Let's open this up. And what we can do is we can say this, when you run it, you have to pick which environment you want this run in. So let's do that. Let's force this to require an environment. And now you can see it's going to ask which environment you want it to run in. We have to do one more thing to make sure that this works, and that involves going into the editor. So I'm now in the editor, and let's look at each one of these actions. So the action is set to run on my production credential, but if I want to use an environment, and let's say I wanted to run it in test, this won't work. We can say search using service ID, and then we can pick my AWS service ID. And I'm going to do this for all of them. Of course, for Slack, I'm going to use the Slack service ID. Okay, and so now that that is set, I can save it. And now that I've saved the RunBook, let's go back to the RunBook page. So now that we're back here at the RunBook page, when we press run, it's going to ask us which environment we'd like to run our RunBook in. And we could pick one, like we could run it in test and production, or we could run it just in test. Let's just run it in test here. And just to show that we're doing this, we'll call this test 1, 2, 3. We run it. We come to Slack and we see that it runs test 1, 2, 3. We can do the same. Let's run it again, but this time let's do it in production. We'll call this one prod 1, 2, 3. And it's going to create a user in production called test 1, 2, 3. So the advantage to using the environments is now you can run the same runbook in all of your different instances. And so if you wanted to give someone access, in this case, to the test environment, you could, and they wouldn't have access to production. Or you could create a second connector that gives access to production. Your runbook is your truth in that there's only one copy of it, but you can run it in all of your different environments. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful in better understanding how you can run your runbooks in different environments.